See, we working on his brow chakra. We're just in back of the crown chakra.
Chase, what the fuck were you thinking about here?
Welcome again to Waxing the Porpoise. This is a podcast where we come together to discuss a film that our co-host, the usual suspect Steve, has never seen before, tending to be like kind of a deep cut scenario and getting him just more versed in the ways of cinema. And then we'll also kind of break it up a little bit from time to time with like a true crime or an especially unexplained kind of weird case that hasn't been covered to death. So today we're covering another film. This is 2001's The Believer, starring Ryan Gosling. I can't remember who it was directed by. I'm your host, Jim G. Baby. As I said, we're joined also by the usual suspect, Steve. Steve, how are you doing this evening?
Hello. I am good, Jim. Good to see you as always. Hey, can you go harder on your microphone?
Like yell, talk harder into it, or like manipulate it?
No, like manhandle it like you're doing right now.
Okay, yeah. I'm trying different things like every episode because I'm a fucking like audio
Stop touching it.
novice. So I'm trying different like
there you
talk right next to it like this, and then
every time you touch it with your hand, it gets all nerfed.
Use your strong hand. We saw a similarly sized object that would fit your ginormous cranium. Here you go.
Yeah, we saw this comically large hat, so we figured it would fit your head. And it just barely does. Like, you know, if you ever go to a baseball game and they give away free hats or anything like that, there's never been a single one that has fit me, even on the last, like, clasp.
Dude, that's funny because Kelsey thinks that I have a big head. I'm like, dude, I know at least 3 people in my life that have tremendously larger heads than I do. I was like,
Do you know what size fitted hat you wear?
I believe I want to say 7 5/8, but I know that's not it. It's like a flea's dick above that. So whatever above that is, like 7.5 maybe.
Yeah, because 5/8 would be above a half.
Okay, so maybe it's like...
Maybe that's what you are.
Yeah. I can't remember.
Because I'm an 8, and I don't know if they make bigger without, like, special ordering it. Because I've when I would buy hats in the store, I'd ask the guy, like, oh, do you have this in an 8? And he's like, maybe, we might have to order it. Thanks.
That reminds me of Brian Regan a little bit, like about the spelling bee. He's like, that's good for little egos.
Yeah.
You get something wrong, sit down in front of your friends.
K-A-T-T, I'm out of here. Yeah. I know there's only one T.
Yeah, I was like, oh no, is this a new, like, feature of Steve, like the golf hat like that? Like,
I'm trying a thing. I'm a weird hat guy now.
Yeah, I can't remember what it is. Like he's like, I want this to be my new affectation, and it's like a what is old pocket watch. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna start using a pocket watch. It's from something. Yeah, I remember.
You guys ever want to change your laugh?
Yeah. That was super funny, not just like the concept, but then when he proceeded to like try out 3 or 4 different laughs all in a row, like he had been thinking about that for a while. Shower thoughts with Tyler, but last name edited. Cool. Sorry, man. I wanted to get done faster, but I've been fried. We got the pool open, so the kid has just been fucking nonstop about being in the pool, and I got fucking
fine.
I got sunburnt yesterday too, and a little bit again today, I think. So I have that, like, you know, when it starts first getting warm, and if you get sunburnt right out of the gate, and like it can kind of like fuck with your mind a little bit too. At least it does for me. Like sometimes, like.
Yeah. Well, you might have some like low grade heat stress too, or something.
Yeah.
I had that happen one time. I was trying to dig out this like stump in my front yard, and like I had just worked myself to the point of exhaustion, and it wasn't even fully up. But I was like, "Fuck it, I've done enough for today. I feel fine about it." Mm-hmm. And my neighbor came home, and he's like super helpful, nice guy. He's like, "Oh, hey, I've got these other great tools that would make it a little easier on you, like a pickaxe and like this special little thing." So then I felt like a bitch for being like, yeah, all right, I'll use those. And then I just kept going for a while, and then got like this huge Dutch Brothers cold brew and drank it and was like, I'm going to die. I felt so sick. I felt so just like sick. Oh. It's like, I can't bitch out in front of Jeff. He's like 60 and is just a super tough dude.
So was that like a reward, the Dutch Bros, or was that to like help like rejuvenate your spirit and strength?
It was more the latter, you know, because I could tell I was tired. I was like, I need to pick me up, and I just don't feel like making coffee here, so I just went and got it. And then it just made the situation so much worse. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a terrible... Even though it's cold brew and you got it cold, like, that still sounds like a terrible, like, thirst.
Well, it's like concentrated, too. And I don't normally... Like, I usually just make coffee at home, and it's not super strong. So going and getting fucking nitrous oxide straight into the bloodstream. I can't even describe just, like, how sick it made me feel, but...
That sucks.
Yeah, so that was a fun day. This is your first time ever seeing this movie, correct?
Yeah, and then for a play on the format of the show, this is actually a fun one because this is like a role reversal. So I pride myself on being a movie buff, and so Steve has stumped me with one that is critically acclaimed and that he likes a lot and that I've never seen. So yeah, this was a first time watch for me. The Believer.
Yeah, and I hadn't seen it. If it came out in 2001, I probably saw it a few years after that, but I don't know if I'd seen it since then. There were a lot of parts that I just did not remember. So it was a nice little revisit.
And this was one you liked enough to, like, later down the road you bought a copy of on DVD when you came across it?
Yes, indeed. Purchased it with cold hard cash.
Because this is one, going back from an earlier episode, you mentioned you'd let me borrow for a period of months or longer, sure. And I had never watched it, and I just handed it back to you like, yeah, sorry, I tried.
You later handed me back a stack of movies and said, I'm pretty sure you said, I didn't watch any of these. Probably like, 6 months later. Like, okay. Yeah.
Just tail between my legs, yeah.
I did the same thing though with Band of Brothers. I think I got through like one or two, and just for some reason I couldn't stick with it. And then finally, I think you were like, I need that back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I need to revisit that as well. But
dude, you do seriously. Like the first episode's kind of a slog, but the second, I think it kicks it up real good. But yeah, for sure, once you get into like 3. You're going. And there's a particularly, like, I can't believe you haven't seen that fucking series. There's a particularly bad fucking ass episode. It's like episode 6, 7, or 8 that you need to watch it just so I can talk about it with you, because that shit is so dope. Anyway.
Well, and HBO is like so accessible now with Max and Go or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not like, I mean, back then it was pretty much just DVDs or nothing.
Yeah, you'd have to find someone, or you'd have to go, like, Yes, so a mini series like that was harder to come by if you didn't just go buy it, like the whole set, like I did.
Right.
But
well, so I guess the big question is, what did you think of the movie? Oh God.
Yeah, I'm of two minds of this picture, and I think that probably has something to do with the fact that I watched it in two viewings, which maybe colored it, and just like
Wow.
my headspace.
Okay.
But I thought it was good, but I think maybe I was expecting a little something more, like of more substance, maybe something that was gonna like rock me a little bit harder, and maybe that's me too, just how jaded I am these days the older I get. But I mean, I thought it was a good film for its time, and it seemed like I didn't do any research on this film, which I wanted to do, but I'm assuming this was maybe this director's first few forays into filmmaking, which if it was, then kudos, because I mean, I thought it was well made, and all the acting performances were good. I just, at the end of the day, it didn't. I felt like I wanted a little bit more of a gut punch from it that I thought I was going to get, and just never kind of delivered. And I also too think that, like, I mean, the obvious corollary or similar film to this that I was priming myself for was American History X. You know, I think that's kind of impossible not to like be thinking that in the back of your head. And that for that side of it, I was pleasantly surprised. Like, I'm glad that it didn't veer into that like ultra shock, like over the top gore, like how visceral, I guess, American History X is. So I appreciated that, but I don't know. I'm torn on it. Like,
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I hadn't seen it in a really long time, and when it finished, I definitely had a feeling of that's not quite as great as I remember thinking it was when I was like a teenager and watching it.
Yeah.
And it's probably kind of what you said too, coming on the heels of American History X. It's tough to compare those two, and I'm pretty sure I probably saw them around the same time. And there's a similar like Nazi movie called Romper Stomper. Have you ever seen that?
No, I only know it by reputation, and that isn't Russell Crowe is in it.
Yeah, I think it's one of his first ones. Imagine American History X, but there's no redemption at the end. Like, there's no being a Nazi's bad. It kind of just ends. Like, so it's a weird message. You know, it doesn't really have the same sort of redemptive quality that American History X or this one has.
So it could be seen like it could be like a primer or like exploitation, you know,
like weird Nazi porn type movie.
Okay,
and that's another one I hadn't seen in a really long time, and then I rewatched it. Like, wow, this is weird. Like, it's just a weird. You know, they just do Nazi stuff the entire movie, and then it ends with some of them dying. I won't spoil it, but yeah, there were definitely things about this movie I liked, or still like to this day. I don't know if you're familiar, but this is sort of based on a true story.
I actually did some super cursory review on YouTube. I just tried getting a couple things. Like, I always do that with like a movie I want to like get a little bit more on, and I'll just type in whatever the movie is explained on YouTube. And I listened to that while I was mowing the lawn earlier today. It was like 10 minutes, and they went into, I can't remember the guy's name, but it sounded really similar to Daniel Balint.
So I wrote it down as Dan Burrows.
Okay. Yeah, when I heard it, I was like, oh, okay, that's close enough. But I only heard about like the fact that he, like the part in the movie where he says, if you fucking tell anyone this, I'll kill myself. And then he really fucking did that. That part
made me laugh in hindsight. He's got his gun pointed at this guy's face, and he's like, you fucking publish that article, I'm going to kill myself. Yeah. If I'm that reporter, it's like, oh no, you mean you'll do something which will make my article even more noteworthy? Like, oh, please don't kill yourself. I don't know if you've seen Blazing Saddles in a while.
Fuck, not in a long time.
Okay, yeah, and we probably will not be reviewing that movie. But there's a funny part where the black sheriff is in the town full of all white people, and he pulls his gun out and puts it to his own head, and he says, "Nobody move or the N-word gets it."
No, dude.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I can't.
And all the other white townspeople are like, "Do what he say." It's so funny. But it just kind of reminded me of this, like, don't make me kill myself. Like,
Yeah.
That's the worst threat you could possibly make.
Yeah, that's such a weird threat.
But yeah, it would be funny if the guy who's this movie is, somewhat loosely based off of or inspired by or whatever, it'd be funny if his name was like, Mort Goldstein or something that was just a really stereotypical Jewish name. Like, wow, how did we not see that coming?
Yeah.
But yeah, this guy's name is Dan Burrows. He used to be a member of the American Nazi Party and also the United Klans of America. And similar to this, he got outed by, I think it was also a reporter for the New York Times, and then shot himself in the chest and then in the head, which is an interesting choice.
Yeah.
And I get, at the time of his suicide, he was listening to music by Richard Wagner, who has, I don't know if it's well known by you or most people, but Wagner is pretty well known anti-Semite, or at least he's got some troubling opinions on Jews back then. And I mean, this was like 19th century stuff, so. But yeah, if anybody hasn't seen the movie, doesn't want to, and wants like a quick rundown, basically Ryan Gosling, who he has to be early 20s, if not late teens, when this movie was made, early in his career.
Yeah, he's a young buck for sure. This is like, I think this is right off the heels of Remember the Titans, or shortly thereafter.
I've never seen it. Calm down. So he plays, he's Jewish kid, raised up in Hebrew school, and then later turns into a neo-Nazi and partners up with one Billy Zane.
If Benjamin were an ice cream flavor, he'd be pralines and dick.
Who is like a sort of well-known, apparently fascist mouthpiece in this movie. And so Ryan Gosling comes in and tries to take them into a little bit more extreme direction. And Billy Zane seems to put up a little bit of a fight at first, and then pretty quickly is like, all right, we can kill him. So then he starts to have sort of a change of heart, and without giving away too much just yet, we can do that in a little bit. But I mean, one of the things I really liked about this movie is you could just sort of see the gradual change or the softening of his character. I didn't feel like it was corny, like he saw one thing and it totally changed his perspective. And I don't know. I think another reason why I liked it quite a bit, having seen it when I was a teenager, was I was raised in a sort of religious household as well, and so I can remember having those types of conversations with religious people, like, well, why do you believe this? This doesn't make sense, and literally you would get that same response, like, well, you just need to have faith. It's like, that's not a satisfying answer for me. So I kind of identified with the sort of breaking away from how you were raised. Obviously, I didn't become a full neo-Nazi, but I could sort of get. Yeah, I mean, not yet. There's still time. I'm somewhat young, but yeah, I could definitely identify with that. And then I thought there were a few really cool things that they did stylistically, where they kept flashing to that scene of him like running down the stairs, sort of running away from his Jewish faith or whatever. Yeah. And then in the end, we can get to the ending in a little bit, but in the end, it's the opposite, where he's trying to run up the stairs, sort of trying to come back, but I think it's just a little too late. Yeah. And then, so they are involved in a hate crime where they go to a Hebrew deli and, they get in a fight with these guys, and they're sentenced to sensitivity training where they listen to a couple Holocaust survivors. And that seems to really trigger I think the thing that is the root of his anger is it's not just that he doesn't believe in the Jewish faith. There are a lot of points where he talks about the Jews being weak, and he just like disdains that weakness. Like even in the very beginning, when he starts beating that kid up on the street, he's like trying to get the kid to fight back.
Yeah, he's like, come on, fucking hit me.
Yeah, he just hates how they just take it, you know. And then when he's talking to those Holocaust survivors, and he goes from borderline crying about how awful of a story as that guy tells about them killing his kid to pissed off, like, why didn't you do anything about it? I think that's the core of what makes him so angry at Jewish people, is that, like, just his perceived weakness of them and them not fighting back. And, you know, so I think that's also one of the motivating factors for why he kills himself. Mm-hmm. It's just he doesn't himself want to be weak, you know. And like he says, it's like, kill your enemy. It's like, well, if I'm my own enemy, guess I better kill myself. So
yeah, he didn't want to be perceived as weak at the end, or like, I thought that was that opening scene where he's bullying that Jewish kid on the bus, and he like spots him, and he's like, I thought it was really weird, like how he started stepping on his feet on the on the bus, and then he's like laying into it harder and harder and just like imposing himself, and he wanted a reaction, he wanted something, and like, you know, and then when they get out to the street and he starts like actually beating him, and he's like, maybe part of that self-loathing of being Jewish, and, you know, like, he's always mad that they're the victim, you know, like maybe victimhood is something that pisses him off. And like, yeah, the turning point, I think that I agree that it doesn't, but at the same time, it does feel kind of abrupt to me watching it. I wish there would have been maybe a little bit more to justify his kind of turn a little bit, because to me it feels 50-50. Like, it feels abrupt but not, I guess. I mean, anybody, I feel like, you know, unless you're like a completely heartless piece of shit, like, would have to feel something after that sensitivity training where they're talking about, like, you know, the Jewish father has to watch his 3-year-old son get impaled on a fucking German bayonet, and they laugh and they spit on him, and, you know, that's fucked up, man. Like, so that's pretty extreme, but I wish there would have been a little bit more to show, like, his crisis of confidence, you know, in the full violent anti-Semitic, you know, skinhead crew that he was running with, because he seemed to be like the ringleader. Even like when they go into that like little diner and stuff and they're talking shit, like, he seems like he's getting pleasure out of that too a little bit. It just, I don't know, because then when they go forward and they start fucking up that synagogue or whatever, and it shows how precious he is about like respecting that big ass scroll and like a couple of traditions, and then it just starts going into him with that new chick that he's banging or that he's doing stuff with. He starts, you know, opening up about how much he knows about the Jewish faith and things like that. It just, I don't know. That part, I feel like it could have used something a little bit more to like shake his foundations, maybe. But
so
maybe that's just me.
The way I think about it, well, I mean, I wouldn't even disagree with you at all. I think the way I think about it is the level of his anger towards Jewish people and the Jewish faith is like a direct inverse of his own feelings of guilt, and it's like equal and opposite. His anger is the flip side of how much he still feels pulled into it. And I think, like your example, when they're in the synagogue and the other guys are just fucking stuff up, he's realizing the reason why he's so mad at them is they don't know why they're mad at the Jews, right? And in his mind, he knows because he's gone through it. He's seen them. He has this resentment towards himself and them. And these guys are just kind of buffoons who just want to destroy things. So I think in that particular area, again, without getting too up our own asses, I think that scene in particular sort of makes him realize, like, oh no, I'm not just mad at the Jews. I'm just so mad at myself for still sympathizing. And I feel like it's like a self-fulfilling or self-perpetuating. You know, the more he sees that little soft spot come up, the more the more angry he gets, and then he starts like wearing the shit, and you know, it's like he's just going closer and closer. And I did think it was really cool. Speaking of that, I don't know, it wouldn't be a flashback, whatever that visualization is where he sees himself as a Nazi officer who's killing the kid.
Yeah.
You know, and then right before he kills himself, it flips and he sees himself as the dad instead of I thought that was a really cool little turn. I mean, it's obviously not super subtle. You're supposed to see what's happening, but I just thought that was a cool transitionary. Like, okay, well, you know, now he's gone from this guy to this new guy.
Right. Yeah, that part, and then the very, very end that it goes right into are probably one of my favorite parts of this film. But
like the very end where he's running up the stairs.
Yeah, in that infinite loop, seemingly infinite loop. Yeah, that shit was like, I was like, oh man. I was glad they added.
What did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, you could take it at face value, you know, like, oh, that's just, you know, that's what the filmmaker wants you to, like, see, like, peer into this. Another way is, like, oh, he's really stuck in some type of fucked up, like, purgatory where, like, he's getting what he wants, you know, like, when he was yelling to God, he's like, strike me dead right now, like, he was challenging him, and going back to all the stuff about Isaac and, like, those things, like, yeah, maybe God is really just fucking with you right now because he does have power and control over you, and you questioned him, so, like, this is your fate. Or maybe that's his hell too, you know? I mean, at that point, like, it's pretty hard to distinguish between purgatory and hell if that's what they were, you know, because that seems pretty hellish after, like, your 10,000th time running up the steps and hearing that guy say the same fucking thing like Groundhog Day. But yeah, that one just kind of hit me like, oh man, that's fucked up. And I also liked it from, like, the way they filmed it, like, from a craft perspective and from, like, a story perspective too, just like including that in your story. I liked that because it wasn't too overly like Shyamalan, like, twisty, but it was kind of like a departure from a movie that felt pretty grounded in reality, and it felt practical, you know, like you could buy this as reality, and then it hits that point and it I liked it.
And yeah, I did too. And we've talked about before, I really don't like those overly ambiguous endings that just leave you completely unmoored to argue about it forever. But this one, I feel like it is slightly ambiguous because it's like, okay, is this hell? Is this like a weird purgatory? Is it neither? Is it just sort of like, you know, when you die, they say your life flashes before your eyes. Is this sort of like a weird reconciliation thought he's having right as he's dying? But one thing I think that's interesting is the teacher who's there talking to him. You could make the argument that, I mean, the teacher's basically telling him there's nothing up there, you know, so whatever you're doing is pointless. So that could lend itself to that just being like his personal hell, living that over and over and over, trying to get back to God or whatever, but just never getting there. Or if you think about it like a purgatory where the teacher is trying to, like, if you imagine you're going to be stuck here until you figure out, you know, the path back. And if it's the teacher who's like, hey, I'm trying to talk to you to help you sort of reconcile your thoughts to get you to that next level, and he just keeps walking past him over and over and over again. That's kind of a cool thought too. Like if you were to just sit and talk to him and sort of hash that out, that like disagreement that they had. Who knows if it would lead to like some kind of enlightenment or whatever? Because
Right.
I don't know a whole lot about Jewish, dogma or whatever. But from what I understood, they don't believe in a hell per se.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is something about like punishment, like for wicked people, with the ability for reconciliation or something. I don't know if that's the case for sure, but I feel like I have heard something like that. So
yeah, and I thought I just had, before I forget it, is how fucked up would it be? Because I kept thinking, like, he keeps running up the stairs, like, it's like, stop. It's like, after the second or third or fourth time, you'd be like, okay, this is something fucking weird. I'm in a time loop. I'd want to, like, test it and do a bunch of different hypotheses. What if I stop on, like, the third step and I try saying something to him? Or what if I get up right on the landing and I talk to him and be like, is this just like a robot and it's only programmed to say one thing? Or, I'd want to go into it. But I just thought of, what if part of that, like, purgatory or hell is to, like, wipe his memory every time he goes past that dude. So every time he just thinks, like, this is the first time I'm running up these stairs and that's that person. So it's like a hell that he's not even aware of. And that just keeps, it's like, that's kind of a scary, a weird thought to think about, but.
And that I agree. And that would lend itself more to it being, this is his personal hell, without really much of a chance for redemption if he's just going to make the same mistake over and over and over. And it's also sort of symbolic of, like, he's trying to come back. He did the right thing right before he died, but it's kind of just too little too late. You know, that's kind of the vibe that I got, where it's like, you're trying, but sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. That part is super trippy. I did not see that coming, but I guess getting back to more like the beginning and my initial thoughts on it too. Like, I remember thinking at least 3 or 4 or 5 times, I was like, I don't know what they're trying to do with this. Like, I'm like, what is this? Like, especially those like fascists headed by Billy Zane and that chick, Lee, whatever her name is, like Leah Munro or whatever the fuck her name was. Yeah, Morbius. Or Mobius, whatever it was.
You're right, Mobius.
I was like, who are these people? Like, what is this group of fascists? Like, it just seemed really foreign to me, but, and like how quick, even though like, they were like, Ryan Gosling's character, he is well spoken and articulate, but he also sounds kind of like a fucking goon at the same time too. Like, he didn't say anything overly like snappy to me. But
they
like
they certainly warmed up to his ideology rather quickly, because like you said, they kind of just seemed like a group of, and I agree with you, I don't really see a contingent of people advocating for legitimate fascism without the racial aspect of it. Who knows? They might be out there in the fringes. You're fucking retarded if that's you.
Yeah.
But yeah, he comes in and is like, I want to make this all about race. And they are like, we don't want to. And then he says a couple little zippy liners, and then they're like, who do you want to kill? It does seem like a rapid. Oh, and also, it's one of my favorite tropes of all time when the lady sits down and is like, are you a police officer or involved in any other law enforcement? It's so funny to me that people think that's a thing. Because guess what? They'll just say no.
Yeah.
They're allowed to lie to you. You're not allowed to lie to them. So don't ever, if you're buying drugs, getting a hooker, whatever you're doing, God love you. Don't think that if you ask them point blank, are you a police officer, that they can't just lie straight to your face. I don't know how that became so popular.
Yeah.
But it's hilarious, and it makes me laugh every time.
Yeah, if you really wanted to get to the bottom of it, you'd have to, like, braze them and, go into the bathroom and make them strip and make sure they weren't wearing a wire or something like that, But outside of that, yeah, they can just lie right to your face. Yeah, I thought it too. Like before that, they were like, "Well, what's your solution? What do you want to do?" And he's like, "I want to kill Jews." Like right away, it's like, okay, yeah, this person's mentally unstable. And then they
In a
asked
room
him to
full
go
of
on.
strangers.
Yeah, it's like, I was like, man, this is really like weird, and it's like taking off, and it's like, this guy's a hardcore like Nazi like skinhead, and like, yeah, he talks a little bit better than what you would expect from someone like that, but still, like, I don't know, that whole assemblage of people and like how he kind of starts trying to do things is like, it just seemed weird.
Yeah, and
maybe that shit's out there.
You would think that because there are definitely the like goon type of neo-Nazis or whatever, and then there are those who probably consider themselves more like Ryan Gosling, like the intellectual white supremacist or whatever. Mm-hmm. I can't really imagine those two groups enjoying each other's company, because the guy's like, man, the Holocaust never happened. And then he's like, yeah, it did. If it didn't, why are we looking up to this person? Like, I can't imagine those two types of people would get along.
Right.
It seemed like strange friendship.
Yeah.
And then when they went out to Hitler Youth Summer Camp or whatever that was, that seemed like a strange group of people as well.
Yeah. You know, watching this movie, like, I think there's a better movie than this, but it's not a one-to-one kind of comparison, but there are like neo-Nazis in it, and it's a little bit more theatrical. But have you ever heard of or seen Green Room?
Green Room, no. With
Anton Yelchin, rest in peace. I think it's from like 2015, 2016. It's ranked or it's classified as a horror film, but it's not. I mean, it's pretty scary, and it's intense, and it's kind of in your face, kind of like not quite like a torture porn classification, but it's got some of those elements, kind of like a Saw film, but really off to the side. I mean, it's just got some really visceral, gory parts, but it's more of like a stress, like a thriller. But it's really good. It's about this punk band that they're like, traveling around, living out of a suitcase, traveling in their van, just trying to get gigs and playing shows. And they somehow stumble across, like the opportunity to play at this place that's like a neo-Nazi like front and like a academy kind of thing of sorts, and they put on shows, and one thing leads to another, and it's like a fucked up situation, like having to, I don't want to give any away, but there are neo-Nazis in that film, and it's definitely more theatrical, but it just, and I guess maybe it's not a fair comparison to The Believer, but it's the only thing that I've seen outside of like American History X. I've heard of Romper Stomper and this movie now, The Believer. It's the only other thing dealing with like Nazis and how they kind of go into that ideology of what they're all about, and like a semi-modern setting. I think you would like it because it's a little bit more like just like foot on the gas, like thriller action with like horror elements. That you would probably like. But yeah, actually, after I talked it out, it's not a fair comparison to this, but like that I enjoyed a lot more. But that's probably just personal taste thing. But I mean, I did like some of the meditation stuff that Gosling's character and like his crisis of faith and confidence and like his back and forth, how he's torn between those two worlds is interesting. And I think it's good that they don't really show him doing anything too super fucked up to where you
can't redeem himself.
Yeah, or like where you can't sympathize with this character. Like, I didn't find myself like, oh man, I feel so bad for this fucking guy. But at times I was like, damn, that's like, that must be weird having that kind of constant internal struggle, because you can see he has like it seems like true admiration for the Jewish faith and the Jewish people. Like when he's like the importance of those texts when those other goons are trashing that synagogue, and how he brings it home, and his love interest expresses interest, and he knows all this shit about like Yom Kippur and when you're supposed to eat and then when you fast, and like, you know, all these little things. Like you could tell he knew all kinds of details and was respectful of them. And so I just thought that was an interesting take. I didn't think it was going to be like that. Like, I thought he was going to do something and he was just going to get into a fucked up situation and die. Like, I didn't realize that it was going in that direction where he's actually like, you know, thinking about his Jewish faith and how strongly he is connected to it, but at the same time not wanting to appear weak or like a victim and railing against that. So, yeah, I like that aspect of the film, but I guess at the end of the day, it just not enough about it to me was like, this is a good film, like, or this is a great film. I thought it was decent. And looking at some trivia now too, this was this director's first, this was his directorial debut, so I take that into account too. Like, I think it was really done. It was made well. I liked the way it was shot too. It didn't seem like there was a lot of cuts. It almost in certain sequences, it almost felt kind of like found footage. Like the camera wasn't perfectly like on a dolly, like and smooth. There were some scenes like where you're walking and you see Ryan Gosling walking and it's like shaky, and there are like one shots where he like it swings around and you can see they didn't cut the film at all and they went right into like a long conversation scene. And so from like a craft standpoint, I give this film kudos too, but yeah, at the end of the day, it just didn't hit me.
That's interesting. I didn't notice that, but yeah, you're right. That is kind of a cool thing about it. It's funny. Imagine if you were raised Catholic and you grew up and then later, you know, disavowed it or whatever, and then someone found out like, well, you were born Catholic. It's like, yeah, well, I'm not anymore. You know, it's like.
Yeah, I think with the Jewish and the Nazi, like that, those two worlds conflicting, it's like I felt the pressure. Like I felt like what he felt when that guy says, well, I'm about to print this in the paper, and like this whole persona he's been, you know, crafting for however many years to be in like this neo-Nazi, like I hate Jews and I know all about them too, like know your enemy and all this stuff. Then to be confronted with like that pride with the fact that like, oh yeah, well you're a fucking Jew and I'm gonna tell everyone about it. Like I definitely bought his like where it seemed like he was with that information, and like how like he was like, I'm gonna fucking kill myself if you do that. Yeah, like all those things.
Yeah, well, because you're gonna lose all credibility with the only group of people you care about, so that's got to be pretty devastating.
Yeah, I mean, because that's who he is, you know. That's like, it seems like that's his entire personality. That's everything that he's been, you know, immersed in, that defines him as a human. So, oh yeah, one thing before I get the fucking what's the chick's name that he is with? Summer Phoenix.
Sister of. Yep.
It is? Okay.
Yeah.
Dude, how fucked up is she though, dude? Like, she has some problems when she's like, her and Gosling are coming together and they're like, you know, kissing on her neck and like they're about to get down and she's like, hurt me. And he's like, what? And she's like,
okay, well, she's a psycho.
Yeah, and then the next morning, like, he comes down for breakfast, he's, like, buttoning his shirt and shit, and she comes around the corner, and her whole left side of her dome is just bruised. I was like, fuck, man.
Yeah.
And then later on, too, like, when they're about to get down again, he, like, they're having this, like, moment, you know? And it seems like... Because at that point, she's, like, asking more and more about the Jewish faith. And, like, it seemed weird. Like, is she trolling him right now? Or is she trying to, like, get a rise? Or, like... I didn't know what her motive was. But then it seemed like she was, like, genuinely interested. And, like, maybe she was trying to, like, pull him out of this extreme hatred for the Jewish, because it's like she could see like, oh, you have respect for this culture and this religion. So maybe was she trying to draw him in or soften him up a little bit more? But either way, there's a point too where they're about to get down and she's like, I want you to hit me in the fucking face. Like when they're like being all kissy and shit. And I was like, oh man. Or she's like, punch me in the face, like out of nowhere.
Yeah. I didn't really care for her character at all, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But I think it's what you're saying. I think she could tell, you know, he's into this more than just research. You know, this is something that's sort of, it has a place near and dear to him. So yeah, I think she was trying to like get him back into, because even in the beginning, she's like, what's wrong with Jews? You know, she doesn't harbor any of the same kind of hate that he does. So as she's getting more into it, she's like, let's light candles, and, you know, just kind of getting him more and more back into it.
Yeah, and then at that part, it struck me too. He's like, no, don't light those. He's like, you have to eat first and then you light them because it's Yom Kippur. If he's like, you do that, you're fasting, you can't eat, you know? Like, he knows all these little, you know, all the little peccadillos and everything, but I just thought it was weird, like, her character and their whole, like, family thing. It's like, how, I guess, like, accepting or, like, just like, oh yeah, he's a hardcore neo-Nazi skinhead. And they're like, oh, okay. You know, it just seems so weird and foreign. I'd be like, get the fuck out of here. I don't want to have anything to do with you, you know? And she was just like, I don't know. It just seemed weird. I mean,
unless that's what they were really about, but they just couldn't do that as their public facing agenda.
Yeah, that whole group's kind of thing felt weird, like I don't know, as a plot device. Or I was reading too, like, I guess this was made pre 9/11, but it was released as a film after, in 2001, I think a few months after 9/11 happened. And I was trying to think, you know, like, as cliche as that sounds, or I guess as cheesy, I mean, the world was different pre 9/11, and this is coming from someone who pre 9/11 I was like fucking 12, you know, and 13, so it's not like I knew what was going on. But to me, the world, I mean, there's a distinct change in like a variety of facets and different ways, how at least my American experience growing up has changed since then. So maybe that plays into like the mood of this film and like the things that are going on in it.
We're not heading down a conspiracy road of
no
related.
no, not at all. No, just like
because isn't your email address no Jews died in 9/11@gmail.com? Because you said that they all got an email that morning to not go to work, right? Because it was all a big conspiracy.
No, I am not a believer in that.
That was a very delayed no.
What did Bush say? He's like, it's an absurd insinuation. Underwear.
Did you see just recently when he was talking about Russia? And he's like, the totally unlawful and unjustified invasion of Iraq. I mean, Ukraine.
Dude, yeah,
and then he's like, dude, and then classic Bush, he's like, 75. So funny.
Yeah, I saw someone made a meme of it, and they were like, he's still at it. Like,
it was funny. As funny as something like that can be.
Yeah. I don't know where I was going with that. I guess just maybe like the idea of like, you know, these pockets of like splinter, like factions of like, you know, like how laughable it seemed like this academic guy, Billy Zane, and this like, you know, assemblage of people that like, yeah, we're going to push fascism, you know, like post 9/11 and like where we are now in the world, you know, it seems like completely laughable, you know, like they're unrealistic that this kind of group of people would exist and have like be seemingly so like cogent and articulate and think like, yeah, this is a a worthwhile venture to like promote fascism and things like that. But the more I think about it, maybe in the mid 90s, late 90s, that's not such a wild thought, like,
Well,
I don't know. That's where I was coming from, I guess.
Well, like you're saying, this was 20 plus years ago, and I don't know about you, but I mean, even just like in the last 10 years, it feels like people throw the term fascist around.
Oh yeah,
with such reckless disregard for the actual definition. It's just like a hand grenade term that people like to use. It's like calling somebody racist or whatever. That back then, there probably were more fringe people who agreed with the actual political ideology versus now where everyone just throws it around to anybody they don't agree with.
Right.
But yeah, it certainly was a different time. It's crazy to think about.
Another thing that struck me too while I was watching this, I thought of the film Kids. Have you ever seen Kids?
I haven't. I've heard about it.
Okay. Yeah, I won't go into
fucked up, and there's like an AIDS rapey thing, and
yeah, it feels kind of similarly shot, like in the way that how I mentioned, like this at times this kind of felt like found footage light in some spots, at least, not the whole movie by any means, but Kids is kind of like that too. It's almost like you can't tell where the acting ends and the reality begins, kind of thing, and it seems almost kind of like documentary found footage styley, but it doesn't go full bore into that. There's definitely like shots, that are cut, and it's like, okay, I'm watching a movie, but it feels like a little like gritty. It also takes place in New York where this is, and like it kind of has that flavor. Two completely different films, but I remember like 30-40 minutes in to especially the beginning where he's following that one Jewish youngster on the bus and is fucking with him. That part definitely, I was like, oh man, this feels kind of like Kids. But I think Kids too is equally like, it has some really fucked up parts, and so there's some more crossover there too, but definitely a different movie. Yeah, I guess after talking about The Believer, like the discussion, I feel like bolsters my opinion. Kind of like if you like break apart something and talk about it a little bit more, like the things that it espouses, I suppose make me like it a little bit more now, I guess, after talking about it.
Well, and I think kind of like, I know we definitely talked about it during the Prestige, but it's probably true of a lot of movies. When you rewatch it, it might have a different sort of vibe to it, and I can't imagine you would ever rewatch it in the next like 5 years, but who knows? Maybe if you do revisit it one day, you'll kind of have a different sort of lens on it, knowing what you know after the fact. I did think there was one thing for sure I can think of that kind of rubbed me the wrong ways when they went to go assassinate that guy, and the guy who has the sweet swastika lip tattoo.
Yeah.
He sees the little sash or whatever that is and realizes he's a Jew and tries to kill him, and he shoots him, and then he disappears. That guy just doesn't go immediately back to the huge summer camp group and be like, hey, this guy who's been hanging out, like, we need to get him. He just disappears. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that part was weird. Like, when he comes back into the picture, I was like, I don't really care for that, because you made it seem like he was maimed or left for dead, or he just took off and was like, well, fuck this. But then, yeah, for him to come back and, like, he's the shooter, I was just like, I don't really like that decision.
If you're Gosling in that situation, I would never go back to that group of people, because even if he didn't come back, word did. So what's to stop them from, you show back up to the group and they just kill you immediately. But when he's talking to the redheaded guy on the bridge, he's like, any sign of, what's his name? Like,
yeah.
No, he's just gone. Like, and now
haven't seen him.
Yeah. Like, don't
Who?
you think that's weird?
Dude,
yeah. Other than that, I can't really think of anything that was like, hey, I don't know.
I thought that guy, that like little redheaded nerd Nazi with the glasses that was like the bomb maker / hacker guy that seemed to like have a hard on for Gosling, or was like wanting to be his like right hand man guy. I thought he had a look a couple times like I thought he was gonna find out that Gosling was Jewish and he tried to kill that other dude. I thought he was gonna like stab him or like throw him off the bridge towards the end there. Like I was like, I wonder if, but that plot line never
he certainly seemed
materialized.
to look up to him after he kicked the shit out of that meathead guy.
Oh yeah, the big fucker. Yeah. That scene was cool just from like a pure like dude like beat down moment. Like it was cool to see like a younger, like a little, like a gangly underdog type dude just fuck up this meat-headed piece of shit.
I did really like the scene in the deli too, because when they're asking him, like, it's just an interesting thing, like one of these weird little religious discrepancies that I could certainly identify with, because you're talking to somebody and you're like, this thing that you believe in, it doesn't make sense, like the meat and the milk thing and the cheese or whatever. Mm-hmm. He's like, just admit it, it's stupid. It's like, no, I'm not going to say it's stupid. It's like, well, then we can't even discuss it at all. But then when the other guy comes over with the stick, and his name's Steve, he's like, oh, Steve's got a stick. That made me laugh.
Sir Pounce.
Yeah.
I just got to that point in season 5 of my rewatch of Game of Thrones. I remember you saying that and I was like, what? I don't remember that part. And then sure as shit, he's like turns out Sir Pounce, like
Yeah.
baby back bitch.
Yeah.
Man urinates on fellow passenger for not being allowed to smoke.
What was that?
That super long, ridiculous, inappropriate bump that I just played.
Yeah, what is that from? I don't remember hearing that.
I just caught it. Caught it in the filter of the internet, and I thought it was funny. Yeah, I'm glad I watched The Believer, though. All in all, even though like I didn't enjoy it the way I anticipated or the way that ultimately I wanted to. I mean, I'm glad I watched it, and I can't remember. I already forgot now the points you made earlier, but you said something like, I don't know, within the first 20 minutes about like his kind of internal struggle that was very cogent and. But yeah, it made me. I was like, oh, yeah, that was a super good read on it, and it makes it makes me enjoy the film a little bit more. Like thinking about, like. Well,
I think having seen it before and kind of knowing where it's going, when you're watching it through that lens of, I mean, the kid's struggling the whole time. Mm-hmm. His whole life basically, since I don't know how old he was in school, like 10 or whatever. But he's been dealing with this and.
Why? How old are you? 10?
Yeah. So yeah, you just see the duality of the way he feels about it. It's like the softer he gets, the more angry he gets, and it has like a flywheel effect.
Mm-hmm. Makes me think of you have never seen Full Metal Jacket?
I have, yeah.
Oh, you have? It reminds me of the part where the lieutenant is fucking with Matthew Modine's character, Private Joker, and he's like, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? And it's a peace sign on his helmet. And he's like, I don't know, sir. Something about the duality of man, sir. Like, and he's trying to explain, like, this shit to this hardcore fucking military sergeant that doesn't give a baker's fuck about what he's talking about, or wants to know. That was kind of funny, to him, because he's like this intellectual, and then he's in this like chaotic fucking like hellscape where he has to choose between life and death every day kind of thing. And, like, this dude, he's, like, in The Believer. He's wearing his heart on his sleeve. He's wearing fucking full big-ass red swastika shirt, just, like, downtown New York. Like, walks right through two black dudes and just fucking, like, chicken wings, both of them coming down the stairs. Like, what? Like, that's the part where I felt like I wanted something a little bit more, that made more sense to me, that he would start to turn away from his neo-Nazi fanaticism, because like at the beginning, like he's pretty balls out, like, you know, like I want to kill Jews. Before he has that crisis of confidence, he looks like he's down to do whatever in the fuck. And his again, as fucked up as that story that old Jewish man tells to him about having his 3-year-old killed right before his eyes, like as fucked up as that is, like how far gone he was as like a character, like where he was at that point as a neo-Nazi, I felt like it needed a little bit something else to knock him off that path that he seemed to be going down. But that's
I don't know. I kind of just see it a little bit differently. Like even at the very, very beginning when he's fucking with that kid, it's like he's looking at a younger version of himself, and that's pissing him off. You know? So I think, and he kind of always looks like he's on the verge of tears when he's getting angry, you know?
Yeah, he does. That's a good point. You have any other...
You have any moves? I'd like to see you incorporate them.
Trivia or interesting anecdotes about this film?
No, not really. I mean, it kind of just... It is what it is.
I guess I have a couple points that we already confirmed. This is the directorial debut of Henry Bean in 2001. It says this was the grand jury prize winner at Sundance Festival in January 2001, and then it got bought by Showtime in 2002, and then was finally released theatrically in New York in a limited run in 2002. So, yeah, it looks like a real underdog of a movie.
The female Holocaust survivors telling that super heart-wrenching story about one of the guards like wanting to rape her, and she won't do it, and so he kills her sister, and so then she does it. And that one fat Nazi is like, who don't want to fuck her anyway?
Yeah.
What an asshole.
Fucking you sick sack of swill.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy sucked. Due to the film's low budget, the crew could not afford permits, and many scenes had to be shot quickly. So maybe that lends a little bit to like the found footage style quality of this film. Like they were like, some of it was legitimate, you know, out of necessity filming like guerrilla style.
That makes sense then.
Yeah. I like that. That gives us some character.
God, that was 20 years ago. I can't even imagine how much more of a pain in the ass like the permitting process is for filming like in New York City.
Yeah, that stuff seems nuts. Like all the background shit that you'd have to do for a film in a major fucking city like that. It sounds like a nightmare. Like getting everyone, like, you know, from craft service to like transportation and like this and that and fucking equipment, and yeah, it sounds nuts.
Can you imagine trying to do filming like that in that like sort of guerrilla hit and run style with a guy who's walking down the street wearing a swastika t-shirt, like,
dude,
in downtown New York City? People are like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that the filming of those scenes must have been pretty fucking hairy for sure. Yeah, the other thing I could think of was like in
Die Hard 3.
Yes, Die Hard with a vengeance. when Bruce Willis is walking down the street with that fucking shit, and I can't even remember
the sandwich board.
Yeah, I can't even remember what it said, but it was like so fucked up. Like, even though that's Bruce Willis, you know, like that could be weird to film.
I thought it just said, I hate N-words.
Is that what it was? Okay.
I thought so.
And yeah, and they were like, like broad daylight, downtown New York, like, yeah, I'd be, even if I was Bruce Willis, and you can like clearly tell that's Bruce Willis, I'd still be scared.
Yeah.
I thought this was a good film. I probably won't watch it ever again, though.
I don't blame you. I think there's certainly a level of nostalgia that probably inflated its quality in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I stand by it. I enjoyed it. I probably won't watch it for the foreseeable future.
I mean, if I hadn't made it clear talking about it, I mean, Ryan Gosling is a standout in the film for sure. I mean, he's the focal point, and I think he nails it. Like just from a acting perspective, like he's got a lot of like. There's at least a few longer soliloquies that he has to fucking spout off, and like the energy that he has in the film, and I bought him like as having that struggle, and him being such a hardcore like neo-Nazi at the beginning, and then I mean, even though I would have liked to see more from the story side to like, in my mind, justify his leap back to like respecting his Jewish tradition and turning back to it seemingly. I still bought like, you know, his respect for the religion, and like when he sees his old friends, you know, and like, you know, he's talking to them, and then at the very end when he's what do they call it? Davening? Like a specific act of Jewish prayer. Yeah. All that kind of stuff, like the Hasidic Jewish stuff is pretty interesting to me, because I know they get into like some wild shit too, like fucking like number theory and you know, weird connections, almost kind of getting into like a really like metaphysical kind of angle. And I remember I watched this movie. Have you ever seen Pi? Like
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That whole side plot where the Hasidic Jews come in and they notice that dude Max, and they start that whole. I wish they would make. I wish that part in Pi. I wish they would have opened up the aperture on that a little bit more and gone into that, because some of that shit was kind of really interesting to me and weird and scary. But
yeah, that was a very, very cool movie. And even, it's funny you mention it, because even watching this today, I got like a little whiff of Pi when they were talking about how the timer shitted out, 13 minutes before it was supposed to go off, and 13 is blah, blah, blah. Because, yeah, there's definitely a more mystical sect of Jewish. And like you said, the Hasidic, and then there's Orthodox, and there's quite the spectrum.
Yeah, that's crazy.
They do have some interesting beliefs.
Yeah,
I mean, growing up in a Christian quote unquote household, they look at the Jews as like an older sibling, because obviously it's two separate religions, but they still sort of. There's like a weird, I don't know if it's like admiration or respect, because everything from Christianity comes from Judaism, but Judaism stops at Christianity, right? Because they don't believe in Jesus anyway. But there's like a weird admiration that sort of goes one way and not necessarily the other.
Yeah, that's a good.
So I've always been kind of aware of that, but yeah.
Yeah, the religious stuff.
Whole other,
yeah, totally. Yeah, I went to a Christian school for a few years out of like necessity, and then I bounced to like a it was mainly like evangelical background, and then I went to another one that was more Baptist, and then I went to one for like a half a year that was a Seventh-day Adventist. You know anything about Adventists?
Yeah, I went to one of those for a couple of years.
Oh, really? Crazy. Yeah, they believe in some wild shit too, man. Adventists in particular.
Well, they can. It's kind of like anything else where there's a spectrum, because I know some Seventh-day Adventists, they don't allow dancing, or like, you know, like some of the more hardcore ones, but the school that I went to, that was a Seventh-day Adventist school, it was pretty normal. I had a teacher named Miss Wrinkle, and she was old as shit. She played the accordion. So it was quite the eclectic group. But.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also went to a Lutheran school for a year, and then more or less regular Christian schools, and yeah, there's a lot of range out there, that's for sure.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, point of me mentioning that is I had a pretty limited understanding of like you know, most kids going to a religious school, they like grew up going to church and Sunday school, and so when I came into it in like, you know, 6th or 7th grade, I felt like a total outsider, because I didn't know all these like basic like the story of Enoch or whoever the fuck and this and that, and they're like, oh,
isn't that like a Mormon story?
Or I don't know. I'm just throwing out. I'm just grasping. Or like, you know, the story of Job, or you know, fill in the blank. Like they'd be like,
we don't know Job.
We all remember in the story of this and that, you know, and the kids are like, they're like nodding their heads, like, yeah, and I'm like, what?
And
like,
you're just looking around like, I can't wait to steal your fucking lunch money.
Yeah. But yeah, like, even so, like, Jewish stuff is even more foreign to me. But what you said about, you know, like the one way, but not necessarily like looking at it the same way back makes sense. Like in my limited understanding of like the difference between Judaism and Christianity. It's all very interesting, but also,
well, I mean, it's kind of like
at the same time.
It's kind of like Christians and Mormons, right? So Mormons added on to Christian stuff, so they look at Christians as like their predecessors, but Christians look at Mormons like they're whack jobs who added to what we had, which was perfect.
Yeah.
Right? So it's kind of like they think of it as derivative, whereas the other side thinks of it as this is what led to us. But yeah, that's a whole other deal.
Yeah. I think the last thing I'll say about religion, that I think the thing that to me that where I was just like, I'm not going to be a religious person, you know, or I'm never going to ever give this any kind of credence or power over my life, is once I learned like all the different denominations, like, you know, like Lutheran versus Pentecostal versus Methodist versus, you know, they're all groups of men and women that have like, it's like, oh, this is the way I interpret it, and like I get to make the rules, and like, okay, this is what they believe. And that at that point it just seemed to me, I was like, oh, okay, this is all just theater, you know, like people are making things up as they go along, and like, you know, the more, and a lot of people, it was just really superficial, and like people look at like God and like going to church on Sunday is like my insurance plan. Like I don't believe, I don't buy that.
We would call those people just in casers. Like, well, you know, if I'm wrong, oh well, but if I'm right, well, it's like, well, that's not a great justification. But you know what's scary is you've got all these different religions, all these different sects, all these different shoot-offs. Wouldn't it be scary if just one of them was right? Like, how frightening is that?
Yeah.
But
well, to me, that's the more fucked up part, and that I've thought about too. It's just like, if you're gonna have this like all-knowing, all-powerful, you know, God that's in charge of this religion, and you know, and I'm the gatekeeper between eternal life and not, and it's this one thing that you need to believe in. Well, that's chicken shit. Like that goes against all your, you know, your all-knowing, omnipotent, loving nature. It's like you wouldn't put people into that fucking game, you know, that like, it just, that kind of trickery to me would like undo itself. You know, like it would mean that can't exist.
Well, it kind of sounds like you agree with Danny in this movie, actually, to bring it full circle, that God is not a all-loving, yet all-knowing, loving father figure. In that scenario, he is like a tyrannical bully, which is what the root of the conflict in, you know, this character's mind comes down to, is reconciling, like the story of Abraham that they keep going back to over and over. Is this a story about testing faith, or is it about establishing power? Mm-hmm. You know? So,
yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily think that's like God is just a bully, you know, and that he does these things for XYZ. I'm just saying, if that were the case, I think that would undo its reality. Like it would that couldn't exist that way. So it's like you die and it's lights out. You don't know what the fuck's happening. If there was a God in like the most generic way that you could think of, like regular God that's like cool and he's not gonna fuck with you, like he wouldn't do that. Like he wouldn't like force you into this super narrow lane. It's like, oh, if you don't get here through this channel, then, well, fuck you. You know, like, I just choose not to believe, like, that's what happens. And if it is, then fuck that. Then it's like, that's not something I want to be a part of anyway, you know? Like, part of me, like, as hard as it sounds to, like, say I just hope nothing happens when I die, the older I get, I'm just like, by the time if I live to be super old, it's like, I probably want to check out anyway. And the more I think about just like nothingness and like, not to get too crazy here, but like before you were born, that whole thing, like you don't remember that. It's like, when you go, you're not going to remember it either. And maybe, and to me, like the older I get, I kind of find comfort in that idea, as maybe morbid to some people as that sounds. Like,
no, I don't think it's morbid. I get it.
So, anyway, I don't know why I went off on that tangent, but it's because we watched a religious movie. Yeah.
So on a scale of 1 to 6 million, how much did you like this movie?
Oh boy!
Just kidding.
In poor taste.
It's a joke.
If we were going out of 10, I'd say
you got to give it a solid B-. Don't you dare.
I was going to say like 7.3. I give this a 7.3 out of 10.
All right. Well,
I'm not really a big fan of out of 10 rankings, though, so...
what about on a scale of 1 to 200,000, the actual number?
Dude.
Don't answer that.
Where do you put this out of 10?
Probably like 7.5.
Okay.
Maybe like 7.9. 7.9. Right. So if somebody was grading generously, they'd bump it up to a B.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't know, especially from 2001. There was a lot of good films made that year, so I think I give it a little bit more credence because I think it, based on that roster of films that were put out that year, I think that's a testament to like this film's staying power, that it was able to catch on and like find an audience, and I mean it's got a good prestige. It's got a 7.1 on IMDb, and it did win the Sundance Film Festival award, which got it noticed even more. So, yeah, but I probably wouldn't watch this ever again.
Never say never.
All right. Well, that was our review. My first time watching The Believer. from 2001. If anybody else has questions for us or wants any comments about this film, what's your take on it? You can email us at waxingtheporpoise.com. Reach out to us on socials at Instagram, Waxing the Porpoise, and Twitter at Waxing the Porp. If you're so inclined, check us out on, if you listen to us on iTunes or Spotify and you want to rate and review, we would welcome that and greatly appreciate it. Any last words? Oversized Greg Norman golf hat.
That's going to play really well to the audio listeners who can't see my hat, but no, I don't think so.
I felt like I was pretty descriptive of the hat, of said hat.
Yeah, but you got to see it.
Let's see, what could we potentially be talking about on our next episode? Are there any other movies that you've added recently or thought about recently? Like, oh shit, I haven't watched that, or that sounds cool.
I have a list going, but it's mostly like popular movies that I haven't seen, and I don't know if we want to kind of steer away from those. And as far as like deep cuts, I guess I don't really know what I don't know. So I mean, right. I could send you the list I have, but it's stuff like E.T., Aliens, like just these super mainstream movies that everybody has seen that I just haven't, like Godfather or
right. Well, at the end of the day, we can talk about whatever the fuck we want to. I think if we stick to like the basic format of like, this is a deep cut, but every once in a while it's like, fuck. I know for sure there's going to be one of these times where I want to get like loaded and talk about Lethal Weapon 2, or maybe do like a watch along to it. It's like, that just sounds like fun.
Yeah.
So I'm not against, like if something comes out like in the future, that looks like super badass, that would be fun to talk about. I'd be totally into that too. But
like the new Top Gun,
I've heard good things, man. Been hearing good things. It looks sick. I saw the preview the other day, and I was like, dude, that actually looks dope. Like the flying scenes, and like the shit that they can pull off now. Yeah, I want to watch that bad. Dude, it's so funny. Like, everyone in my wife's family hates fucking Tom Cruise. Like, with a passion, because he's a fucking psycho and a Scientologist nut. But, it was funny. My father-in-law, he watched... Have you ever seen Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise? I think it's from, like, 2014. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty wild. Bill Paxton is in it.
Is that the one where he, like, dies...
Yeah, it's like Groundhog Day. Yeah, it's kind of like Groundhog Day kind of thing going on.
I heard it was good. It sounded good.
I thought it looked dumb, and I was like, I'll never watch that. And I happened to catch it, and I was like, oh, fuck, this is a fun ride.
Is it pretty good?
Yeah, it's solid. It's got some really cool action. That chick that's in it, Emily Blunt, is badass, and she's hot, so that's fun. Yeah, it was a good flick. And Bill Paxton's in it, too, for like 20 minutes. He's got a cool role. It's like if Chet from Weird Science, like, straightened up a little bit and actually joined the army and was a lifer. That's kind of the character he plays. But anyway, my father-in-law, he watched it and he thought it was like super dope. And I was over at my in-laws' house and he's like, oh, did you guys hear the new Tom Cruise? It's called Edge of Tomorrow. I just watched it. And my mother-in-law, and she's really short. She's like 5 foot, and my father-in-law is like 6'5". She's like looking up at him and like patting him on like the top of his thigh. And she's like, Ben, nobody here likes Tom Cruise. And he was just instantly like, he was like kind of bummed. Like, I looked at him, I was interested. I'll check it out, like in my head. But like the mom was just like, no, we don't talk about Tom Cruise here. And like the dad was like, all right. And he walked back and sat in his recliner. I was like, what?
I was defeated.
Yeah, super defeated.
Is this the I got it on disc.
Yeah. I got it right here on disc.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, anytime I went over there, fucking stacks of burned DVDs on top of the TV, like on the end table. Like, you go to set a drink down and it's like DVD coasters everywhere. But yeah, the new Top Gun does look super dope. All right. Well, I'm gonna take a look here. Let's try the randomizer again and see what we get.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we got option 3, which we've kind of neglected at this point. I guess this is so outside of a movie or outside of something of the unexplained nature. This really could be anything. And I had 5 placeholders for, like, you know, a potpourri option. One would be places. Just in general, treasure hunting, ghosts, death in the afterlife, or your profession of choice, or, you know, your stock and trade these days. Is that something you would want to talk about, or should I try and randomize this again?
No,
let's do that. Are we ready for that?
We've kind of alluded to it a couple times, so we may as well just get it out there.
Okay. Do you want to explain just real quickly what that'll be for next week, or?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So, stay tuned. Next week's episode, we'll be discussing Steve's vocation currently, and so that should be fun. Sound good?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us again. This has been episode 8 on The Believer. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Take it easy.
Bye.
Chase, what the fuck were you thinking about here?